It's interesting what you say about the property side of things, and there are a lot of businesses that are doing this at the moment using blockchain to try and track digital goods and be able to resell those on secondary markets. Again, it comes back to, well, two things. Firstly, a definition of value, and by doing, there are two definitions of value. You have things have material value, or they have functional value. And digital goods definitely fall into the functional value camp because ultimately bits and bytes on a server somewhere can't have material value. But however, that brings its own problems, and as we know, Jazz, with the Counter Strike casino, weapon casinos and secondary markets that were created around Counter Strike weapons, for example, and skins. I mean that caused a huge issue, and Valve ended up shutting it down because you had people taking advantage, people taking advantage of that and running casinos and secondary markets and actually doing real gambling for these weapons, which wasn't great. On the flip side, the publishers probably don't want secondary markets because it removes revenue opportunity from themselves, in the same way we discussed last week. Why are PlayStation offering a PS5 without a disc tray, for $100 left? Well, I think we all know the answer to that. It's because they want all the purchases to go through the PlayStation store.
Yeah, and that's absolutely one of the, going back to the example we were talking about earlier, why would you not permit secondary trading in items which are required by loot boxes? Well, and if you were to do that, would there be less demand for the loot boxes in the first place? Probably, perhaps, potentially.
Well, probably.
Again,
yes, probably. Supply and demand, right? But if you're asking a Keynesian economist, he'd probably say yes, right? I don't know.
Yeah, I wouldn't make any assumptions around it. I think if there's one thing the games industry has been able to do, it's been able to solve what appeared to be quite intractable problems through thinking very carefully about customer behavior and then tweaking and changing things. Again, let's not forget, this is where free-to-play came from. It's easy to bash free-to-play, but would we really want to go back to a world where you have to have you have to pay up front? Is that really what we're talking about?
But free to play, but loot boxes aren't. I mean, free to play existed, and I think League of Legends is probably one of the poster boys for poster people, you might say these days, for free to play, and that is, there has never been a loot box in League of Legends as far as I can recall. It was all driven by skins and runes, and those, it never had loot boxes.
So let me ask you this then. Let me ask you two this then. Have arguments been identified to you that only apply to loot boxes and don't equally apply against free to play in totality?
And I think that's the gambling mechanic. Yes, I think the random chance of receiving a reward is specifically the loot box issue.
Yeah, that's a fair point.
And not only that, it is the when you go into, and this, when we go into the League of Legends store and you say, I want that Ari skin, I know what the skin looks like, I click buy.
Yeah.
When you open a loot box, you get the screen rumbles, the lights go on, the sound starts to pulse, the box explodes. Like, I've never seen a box explode in real life, right? Have you never seen physics go like, it starts to, and then bam, bam, bam.
It's weird how games work. I'd never thought of it like that before. It never occurred to me, well, my Amazon box wouldn't explode and present me with a thing, would it? It's just the magic of games, the things that you will accept on the screen that you just wouldn't ever consider in the real world.
Those are all techniques learned from the gambling industry and vice versa, right? And when one item is bathed in golden light and one item is, it starts to trigger these very deep kind of psychological reward mechanisms.
There's theatre, and I think also that when you hear that games companies are going to solve the problem, not my words, theirs, by publishing probability rates, or as I would call them, odds, you kind of think that's kind of playing into this gambling argument even more now, because you're now going to say you've got a 5-to-1 chance of getting whatever it is in the loot box. We're going to disclose that at the outset. So if you buy 5 lots, you'll get one of one.
And even then, you've got to be careful. I had a South Korean games lawyer friend of mine who was talking at a conference I was at a while ago, about a particular case. So there is a mandated disclosure of odds in South Korea, and one of the publishers had been challenged in respect of a particular loot box mechanic, where the odds of winning a particularly rare item were stated as being, quote, less than 1%. Now, for various reasons, that publisher then had to go through its paces in a lot of detail to the regulator. And it turned out that the actual odds of acquiring the item was something like 0.001%. To which they said,
technically
yeah, but it's
less than 1%. Yeah. Well, sure. Yeah, and that's true. And I guess there's also a trust issue as well. You know, what is the algorithm that's deciding whether you get an item or not? You know, are the items that you're being presented, do they have any bearing on the items that you already own or don't already own? Are there items
Well, that's another interesting issue. And I don't know whether you will have seen some press that was being discussed earlier this week about government proposals, not much more than press, I think, at this stage, about imposing a duty of impartiality in respect to the exercise of algorithms, whatever that means.
Whatever that means. Yeah.
Sounds great, but what does that mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
Algorithm is it's not impartial. It isn't. An algorithm is seeking out, you know, that way through. That's what algorithms do. Yeah. Based on probabilities. I mean, you know, hello?
And actually, you know, with my Hero Capital hat on, I see a lot of businesses, and some of the businesses that I see are pitching at the moment are businesses that are directly geared to increase the monetization in your in-game store. And the way that they do that is by pulling data from your game, looking at the player or cohort and what they do and what they don't do, and then presenting items in a particular fashion or a particular time to elicit an improvement in monetization. And so data comes into a really, really big play. To your point with receiving an Amazon box, it doesn't explode in colors and sound. When an Amazon box arrives, you go, oh, here we go. Okay, I've got to get a knife or scissors. I can't. Okay, I'll use my keys. You try and hack it open with your keys. You open it up. There's some bloody polystyrene in there. It's not. You know, by the time you're halfway, you're like, oh, I can't even bother opening it anymore. Why did I order this thing, right? But the frictionless environment of that reward within the loot box, coupled with the fact that you're spending money, coupled with the fact that, you know, for all the things that we've talked about, it, you know, I think this is a personal worry, and I don't know if this is shared by anyone, but especially the fact that it's being used by young children, or being these mechanics are being used with young children or vulnerable people. You know, not, you know, there are vulnerable people who are being taken advantage of by these mechanics. I think I really think I'm really surprised that the industry hasn't wanted to do more to.
I mean, unquestionably, I'm sure there are, in the sense that the young and the vulnerable are a proportion of the population. But if you're going to make regulation, then you need to have more than that, right? Because I would say very respectfully, Spike, that you could condense that argument down to, please won't someone think of the kids? And that's not the sound basis for regulation.